everybody, it's Teresa. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to make a Cellini spiral necklace today. All that is tubular peyote like we've already done. It's just that I'm going to be using different sized beads. But it's just like the tubular peyote I did the other time in the other video when I put it on the leather. The technique is the same. I'm just using different size beads. And I'm going to attempt to put it on this cord that I got from Jesse James Beads in the last Magical Mystery Bead Box, which is going to involve me gluing these little caps that came with them on here. And that could be disastrous because I do not have the best relationship with glue. I mean, I can use glue when it comes to, you know, gluing macrame knots or leather or something, but when it comes to something like this, I just don't know how this is going to turn out. I've got my E6000 here. I thought about using my Loctite, but I was afraid to use it because it dries so fast, and I thought if I mess up, maybe I can salvage it if I just use the E6000 that doesn't dry so fast. So I'm going to attempt this, but fooling with glue is about like me trying to fool with fingernail polish. It's probably not, it's very likely not going to end well, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm using, these are some 3mm fire polish beads. I don't really know what color they are. I mean, they're black, but they've got some little speckles on them there. So I don't really know what that finish is, but I wanted to use some black for that's going to be my biggest bead. And I wanted to use some black because this cord has got some black in it. I would rather have had like a 2x3mm rondelle, but I didn't have any black, and I wanted to use black for the biggest bead. And I've got some 11-0 Delicas in galvanized champagne that I'm going to use. I'm using this for my smallest bead. I mean, it's the same. These are 11-0 gunmetal, metallic gunmetal, Miyuki metallic gunmetal. And I mean, they're the same size. They're both 11-0s, but the round beads take up a little bit more room. So I'm gonna use this as my smallest bead. Usually I use 15-0s, and I tried it with 15-0s, but I don't think y'all would have been able to see what I was doing. So I'm gonna use 11-0s Delicas, and then I have the 11-0 metallic gunmetal, and then I have some 8-0 turquoise Ceylon in Miyuki. And what I'm going to do is graduate up and then graduate down. It's not hard. It's just tubular peyote. These little caps that came to go on the end of the cord look rose gold to me. So I've got a rose gold lobster clasp and some jump rings and an extender chain. And then I'm going to do a little dangle to put on the end of the extender chain. With a ball head pin there. I'm going to dangle one of my little 3mm fire polish soffit. I've got, the reason I've got these, I just happened to have one of these. I happen to have 2 strands of these 3mm beads, and I had one already cut apart. I guess I'd tried to use it for something else. Like I said, I've made 6,000. I have a tulip beading needle here, size 11, and I have some extras here in case I need them. I have my 8-pound fire line and smoke. I have my crochet needle I'm going to put up through the center of my work and go around it like I did the other day with the tubular peyote that I did. I have my chain nose pliers and my bent chain nose pliers to put my findings on at the end, and I use my chain nose pliers to flatten my thread so I can get it through the needle. I've already got my needle threaded with a length of thread and a stop bead, and I'm leaving about a 10-inch tail. Of course, I'm not going to put a clasp on it, but I'm going to come back and try to cinch the ends in a little bit. I think I did, yeah, I did that on that peyote one I did the other day. I'm going to do kind of the same thing on this. So that's why I'm leaving the 10 inches. I think that's everything. Let me get my stuff out of the way, and we'll start this glue process and see what happens. Okay, I've got me a napkin out here so I won't get glue all over my bead mat. And I've got a toothpick in case I need some help here. And I've got my little caps, and I got my cord. I measured this is about 18 inches of cord, so this will be kind of like a choker length necklace, I guess. So I'm going to squirt some of my glue out here. I'm telling y'all, I'm not adept at this, so I don't know. I don't do this very often. That's why you don't see me using those end caps very often, because I'm afraid of glue. I'll just put some on my cord here. I'll probably put way too much or way too little. I don't use this very often, so it's this glue, so it's a mess. I'm not sure if that's enough or not, but I guess we'll just have to see. I don't think it takes much. This is some pretty good glue. I'll get it all over my outside of my end cap, make it ugly. Okay, I'm just going to do the same thing over here. My glue's trying to leak out everywhere. Well, that's way too much, I imagine. One side will probably be glued really good, and the other side will be not glued enough. I don't know. Okay, well, I got them on there. I guess we'll have to wait and see how well they hold. I think you're probably supposed to wait about 24 hours before you try to do very much with this. At least 12. But I can at least get my beaded piece on it. Of course, I won't stress the ends of it until it glues a good 24 hours. So, got that done. So now I'm going to get some of my beads out and start my stitch. Hold on. Okay, I've got my cord over here drying, and I've got some of my beads poured out. I'm going to try to pull in a lot here so you can see what I'm doing. I don't know what I was thinking when I was talking about giving that glue time to dry. It's going to have plenty of time to dry because I'm not going to get this done tonight because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning here right now. So I won't be finishing this tonight. By the time I get this finished, it'll dry, and we'll see whether it's going to hold or not. So with Cellini Spiral, like I said, it's just tubular peyote, but the way you do it, you start with your smallest bead and you graduate up to your largest bead, and then you graduate back down. You don't have to use delicas, you don't have to use 15-0s, you can use anything you want to, as long as you just graduate up in size and graduate down in size. You could do, 3 strips of different colored 11-0s and then go into 8-0s and then go into 6-0s if you want to, just whatever you want to do. But you just graduate up and then you graduate down. And you have the same beads on each side of your big bead. So, since we're doing peyote, we're going to pick up the first 2 rows at once. We have to pick up double for when we start out. So, if I want 1 row of my delicas, I'm going to pick up 2 of them. If I want 1 row of my gunmetal, I'm going to pick up 2 of them. If I want 1 row of my 8-0s, I'm going to pick up 2 of them. If I want 1 row of my fire polish beads, I'm going to pick up 2 of them. And now I'm going to go back down. I want another row of my 8-0s on the other side of my fire polish bead. So I'm going to pick up 2. I want another row of gunmetal on the other side of that, so I'm going to pick up 2. And I want another row of delicas on the other side of that, so I'm going to pick up 2. I'm going to bring them all down here to my needle. Now I know that that's going to put, when I sew these together in a circle, that's going to put 4 delicas in a row there. Whereas we've only got 2 of all the other beads. But that's okay. You want your smallest bead to be double, because Cellini spiral is not a very flexible stitch. It's pretty rigid. So you want your smallest bead to double it so that it'll help with the flexibility of it. I thought I had one here that I could show you an example of, but I don't. So I can show you what I'm talking about when I get more of this done. I'm going to sew through all the beads again. We'll sew them into a circle and sew through all of them. And just like with the tubular peyote, you want to keep good tension on this when you're doing it. And I really especially want this first row to be good and tight. So I'm going to sew back through all of these. I'll go on past my stop bead. Make sure to get through all the beads and don't let your thread sneak out. Now I'm going to go on past my biggest bead, my fire polish beads. And I'm going to come out the second 8-0 past my fire polish bead. You don't have to. You can come out any bead you want to. You can start this with any bead you want to. I just like to do that. I don't know why. I just do. So now I got 14. Make sure I didn't. This 8-0 looks weird. Make sure I didn't miss it, but I didn't. There's no thread there. Thought my needle might have sneaked out on me there, but I don't think it did. So I got 14 beads on my needle here. So since we're doing peyote, we're going to pick up a bead and skip a bead. So I'm always going to be adding 7 beads every round. So I'm going to skip. I'm going to pick up a 8-0, skip one of my gunmetal and go into the next gunmetal. I'm going to have half of all the beads that are on here. So I'm going to have, where I've got 2 8-0s here, I'm going to have 1. And in order to keep up with where my step up is, I'm going to make a little pile like I did the other day. So I'm going to have 1 row of 8-0s. I'm going to have 1 row of gunmetal. So I'm going to take an 8-0 and a gunmetal and put it in my little pile here. I'm going to have 2 rows of my delicas. So I'm going to take out 2 of those. Lay them here. And then I'm going to go back. I'm going to have, on this side, I'm going to have a row of gunmetal. So I'm going to take out another gunmetal. I'm going to have another row of 8-0s. So I'm going to take out a 8-0. And then I'm going to have 1 row of my fire polish beads. So I'm going to lay out a fire polish bead. So I've got 7 beads laid out in here in my little pile, all by themselves. And when I run out of beads out of my little pile, I'm going to know it's time to step up. So on my stop bead back here, I'm coming out of this 8-0, this turquoise 8-0. I'm going to pick up a turquoise 8-0 because just like the regular tubular peyote, you always pick up the bead you're coming out of. So I'm going to pick up my 8-0. I'm going to skip this gunmetal bead and go into the second gunmetal bead. That sits that 8-0 next to the gunmetal bead I skipped. Now I'm coming out of a gunmetal, so I'm out of my little pile. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip my next bead, which is a. I'll get my stop bead out of the way here. I'm going to skip my next bead, which is a delica, and I'm going to go into the next delica. That puts that gunmetal bead next to the delica I skipped. Now I'm coming out of a delica, so I'm going to pick up a delica out of my little pile. I'm going to skip the next bead in line, which is the delica, and go into the next delica. pull my thread through. And that sits that delica next to the delica I skipped. Now I'm just going to turn my work as I go. I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica out of my little pile I made here. I'm going to skip that next bead, which is a gunmetal, and go into the second gunmetal bead. And that's going to sit that delica next to the gunmetal bead I skipped. Now I'm coming out of a gunmetal bead, so I'm going to go to my little pile here. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip this next bead in line, which is an 8/0, and go into the next 8/0. That puts that gunmetal bead next to the 8/0 I skipped. Now I'm coming out of a 8/0. I'm going to pick an 8/0 up out of my pile. I'm going to skip this 3mm fire polish and go into the second 3mm fire polish. And that sets that 8/0 next to the 3mm fire polish I skipped. Now I'm coming out of the 3mm fire polish. I only have a 3mm fire polish left in my pile, so I know this is where I do my step up. So I'm going to skip the next bead in line, which is the 8/0, go into the 8/0 after it, and the 8/0 on the diagonal, because that's my step up. So that's my first round. Now I'm going to lay out my beads for my second round. I know I want one of my fire polish beads, my big beads. I want two of my 8/0s because I've got a row on each side. I want two of my gunmetal beads because I've got a row on each side. And I want two of my delicas because I got two rows right there next to each other that I'm making. So I got 7 beads laying in my little pile here. Now it's a little bit easier with this because the beads are different sizes. It's a little bit easier to see your sticking out beads, which is what we're going to go into next. So I could just say pick up a bead and go into all the sticking out beads, but I like to show you how it works because whenever I have watched people teach beading for years, and some of them will just say, this is just put this bead here, and they don't tell you why. And that drives me crazy because I need to know why. I need the logic of it. So I'm going to do just like I did the other day. I'm going to explain this to you as best I can. I'm coming out of the 8/0. So I'm going to pick up an 8/0 out of my little pile. And I'm just skipping a bead and going into the next bead like I did the first time. And I know it looks funny, but if I pull this up into a tube, this 8/0 and this gunmetal bead are next to each other. This gunmetal bead and this delica are next to each other, so I'm really just skipping that gunmetal bead. So I'll go into this sticking out gunmetal bead. Now, I'm coming out of a gunmetal bead. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal bead out of my little pile. If I pull this up into a tube right now, the gunmetal bead is sitting next to that delica. These two delicas are sitting next to each other, so I'm really only skipping this delica. So I'm going to go into this delica. So now I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica out of my little pile. If I pull this up into a tube, these two delicas right here are next to each other. This delica and this gunmetal are next to each other, so I'm really just skipping that delica right there. So I'm going to go into the delica here that's sticking up. Now I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica. Now if I pull this up into a tube right now, the delica I'm coming out of would be sitting next to this gunmetal bead, and this fire polish bead up here would be sitting next to this 8/0 bead. So I'm really just skipping this gunmetal bead right here. So I'm going into the gunmetal bead that's sticking out. Now, I'm coming out of a gunmetal bead. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal bead out of my little pile here. If I pull this up into a tube right now, This gunmetal bead would be sitting next to this 8/0. This 8/0 is sitting next to this fire polish bead, so I'm really just skipping this middle 8/0 here. So I'm going to go into the 8/0. And I've got it hooked around my finger. Okay, now I'm coming out of an 8/0. I pick up an 8/0 out of my little pile. If I pull this up into a tube right now, this 8/0 would be sitting next to this fire polish bead. This fire polish bead would be sitting next to this 8/0. So I'm really just skipping this fire polish bead. So I'm going to go into this fire polish bead that's sticking out. Now, the only bead I got left in my little pile is my fire polish bead, so I know that I've got to do my step up now. So, if I pull this up into a tube right now, this fire polish would be sitting next to this 8/0. This 8/0 would be sitting next to this. No, this fire polish would be, this fire polish would be sitting next to this 8/0. This 8/0 would be sitting next to this gunmetal. So this 8/0 right here is really the only one I'm skipping. So I'm going to go into the gunmetal, the 8/0 after that, and the 8/0 on the diagonal. Pull my thread through. And that's what I've got so far, and it just looks like a mess, but I'm going to pull it up into a tube after I go back and look at this and see if any of that made sense. So hold on. Okay, that's probably about as much sense as I'm going to make, except I did notice once I called a gunmetal bead a fire polish. I misspoke. I hope you know which one that was and what I meant. Now I'm going to put it on my little crochet hook here, and I'm going to pull it up into a tube. Just going to push everything up into a tube here. Get my stop bead out of the way. Just push everything up into a tube. And I probably could use a bigger crochet hook to do this with, but this is the one I've got. I know I've got more around here somewhere, but it's been an awful long time since I've crocheted, so I'm not sure where they are. Okay. Now I'm gonna take my beads and lay them in a pile again. I know I need 2 8/0s, 1 fire polish, 2 11/0s gunmetal, and 2 delicates. I got 7 beads there. Now, I'm coming out of this 8/0. I'm going to pick up an 8/0, skip this gunmetal bead, and go into the gunmetal bead that's sticking up. Now, coming out of a gunmetal bead, so I'm going to pick up a gunmetal bead out of my little pile. I'm going to skip this delica that's down here and go into the next delica that's sticking up. It's kind of hard to see because they're little, but it's sticking up. Now, I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm going to skip the next delica and go into the delica that's sticking up there. Now, I'm coming out of a delica, pick up a delica out of my little pile. I'm going to skip that gunmetal and go into the next gunmetal. Okay, now I'm coming out of a gunmetal. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip this 8/0, and it's hard to see that it's sticking up because they're so much bigger. But you're going to skip this 8/0 and go into the next 8/0. Okay, now I'm coming out of an 8/0. I'm going to pick up an 8/0, skip the next bead, which is a fire polish, and go into the next fire polish. Sometimes you have to push them up there where they're supposed to land. Okay, now, the only bead I got left in my little pile is the fire polish. So I know I'm about to do my step up. So I'm going to pick up this fire polish. I'm going to skip this 8/0 that's down here. And I'm going to go in this 8/0 that's sticking out here. And the one on the diagonal. And that's my step up. So now I'm going to lay my beads out again. I'm going to 1 fire polish, 2 8/0s, 2 11/0, gunmetal, and 2 delicas. Seven beads there. Now I'm coming out of an 8/0. I'm going to pick an 8/0 up out of my little pile. I'm going to skip. I'm going to skip this gunmetal that's down in here, and I'm going to go in the gunmetal that's sticking up. Okay, now I'm coming out of a gunmetal. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal on my little pile. I'm going to skip that delica that's down here, and I'm going to go in this delica here. That's the next one. Now I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica out of my little pile. I'm going to skip the next delica that's down a little bit there. I'm going to go into the next delica. Now I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica out of my little pile. I'm going to skip that gunmetal there, and I'm going to go into the next gunmetal. Now I'm coming out of a gunmetal. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal out of my little pile. I'm going to skip the 8/0 there and go into the next 8/0. I'm coming out of an 8/0. I'm going to pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip that fire polish bead and go into the next fire polish bead. Now all I've got left in my little pile is a fire polish bead, so it's time to do my step up. So I'm going to pick up my fire polish bead. I'm going to skip the 8/0, go into the next 8/0 and the one on the diagonal. And you're beginning to get that little spiral thing going on there. Now I'm going to pick up my beads, put my little beads in a pile again. 1 fire polish, 2 8/0s, 2 gunmetal 11/0s, and 2 delicas. My little pile there. Now, coming out of an 8/0, I'm going to pick up an 8/0, skip that gunmetal down there, and go into the next gunmetal. I'm coming out of a gunmetal, pick up a gunmetal, skip that delica that's down there, and go into the next delica. Now, I'm coming out of a delica, pick up a delica, skip the delica that's down in there, and go into the next delica. Now I'm coming out of a delica, pick up a delica out of my little pile, skip that gunmetal that's down in there, and go into the gunmetal on the other side there. Thread's trying to get wrapped around itself. Okay, now I'm coming out of a gunmetal. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip that next 8/0 and go into the 8/0 that's sticking out there. Now, coming out of an 8/0, I'm going to pick up an 8/0, skip a skip the 3 millimeter fire polish, and go into the next 3 millimeter fire polish. Now all I've got left is my 3 millimeter fire polish. And you can tell by now that every time I'm about to do my step up, it's when I have my 3 millimeter fire polish to pick up next. So instead of putting them all out in a little pile, you can just know that when you pick up your 3 millimeter fire polish, the design I'm doing, when you pick up your 3 millimeter fire polish, that's when you do your step up, or whatever bead you notice that it is every time. So I'm going to skip this 8/0, go into this 8/0 and the one on the diagonal. So now I'm going to stop a minute and go back and look at this and rest my hand a minute because it's really hurting from holding this. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I went on the hunt and found a bigger crochet needle to put this on, crochet hook, so that I think this will help you see it better, and it'll for sure help my hand. So I'm going to do it this time without putting them in little piles. I'm just going to know when I'm ready, when I pick up my 3 millimeter fire polish, that's when I'm going to do my step up. So I'm coming out of an 8/0, pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip that gunmetal bead down in there, and I'm going to go into the gunmetal bead that's sticking up. I'm coming out of a gunmetal. I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip that delica that's down in there, and I'm going to go in the delica that's sticking up. I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm going to skip the delica that's down in there, and I'm going to go into the delica that's sticking up. I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm going to skip that gunmetal that's down in there, and I'm going to go in the gunmetal that's sticking up. Coming out of a gunmetal, I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip that 8/0 that's down in there and go in the 8/0 that's sticking up. Coming out of an 8/0, I'm going to pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip the fire polish that's down in there, and I'm going to go in the fire polish that's sticking up. Now I'm picking up my fire polish bead, so I know this is where I do my step up. So I'm going to pick up a fire polish. I'm going to skip the 8/0 that's down there, and I'm going to go in the next 8/0 and the one on the diagonal. Now I'm just going to do a couple more rows, and then I'll leave y'all alone. I'm coming out of an 8/0. I'm going to pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip the 11/0 the gunmetal 11/0 that's down in there and go in the one that's sticking up. Coming out of gunmetal, I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip the delica that's down in there, and I'm going to go into the delica that's sticking up. Coming out of a delica, and I'm always pulling tight because you want to keep tight tension on this. I'm going to coming out of a delica, so I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm going to skip the delica that's down in there and go in the delica that's sticking up. I'm coming out of a delica. I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm going to skip the gunmetal that's down in there and go in the gunmetal that's sticking up. Coming out of a gunmetal, I'm going to pick up a gunmetal. I'm going to skip the 8/0 that's the next in line there that's down in there, and I'm going to go into the 8/0 that's sticking up. Coming out of an 8/0, I'm going to pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip the fire polish that's down in there and go in the fire polish that's sticking up. Coming out of a fire polish, so I'm going to pick up a fire polish, and I know this is where I do my step up. So I'm going to pick up a fire polish, I'm going to skip the 8/0 that's down in there, I'm going to go into the next 8/0 and the one on the diagonal. Now I'm coming out of an 8/0. I'm going to pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip the gunmetal that's down in there and go in the gunmetal that's sticking out. Coming out of a gunmetal, pick up a gunmetal, skip that delica that's down in there and go into the delica that's sticking up. Coming out of a delica, I'm going to pick up a delica, skip the delica that's down in there, and I'm going to go into the delica that's sticking up. Coming out of a delica, I'm going to pick up a delica, I'm going to skip that gunmetal that's down in there and go in the gunmetal that's sticking up. Coming out of a gunmetal, I'm going to pick up a gunmetal, skip that 8/0 that's down in there and go in the 8/0 that's sticking up. Coming out of an 8/0, I'm going to pick up an 8/0, I'm going to skip that fire polish and go into the fire polish that's sticking out. Now I'm coming out of a fire polish, I'm going to pick up a fire polish, and this is my step up. So I'm going to pick up my fire polish, I'm going to skip that 8/0 that's down in there, go into the 8/0 that's after it and the one on the diagonal. And you see you get the little spiral there. Like I said with the tubular peyote, this is the same thing as tubular peyote, but it's really easy when you get into doing this and you get in the rhythm of it to let your mind wander and you see that next bead coming up and think that's the bead you're supposed to pick up, but it's always the bead you're coming out of. And I just go back and check every now and then and make sure my spiral looks right. And if you've picked up the wrong bead, you'll see that there's something wrong and you can go back and fix it. So I'm going to do until I run out of thread, and then I'll be back and show you how I add thread. Okay, this is what I've got so far. And I have to add thread now. But what I was talking about, doubling up your smallest bead, it just helps it. It gives it a little flexibility there. That's why you do that. So I'm going to leave my needle in here so I know where I want to come out with my new thread. I think I could have remembered, but I'm going to do that. I just stepped up. Of course, you don't have to do it where you step up. You can do it anywhere. I've got a new thread with a stop bead on it. And I'm just going to sew up in here until I'm coming out the same place here that my thread that I'm running out of is coming out. I'm just going to go in this strip of turquoise here because that's what I'm coming out, the turquoise. Just going to pull it through till my stop bead stops it. And go on through until I'm coming out there. And now I'm going to put that needle down. I'm going to pick up my needle with my old thread on it. And I'm just going to go down through here. And I'm not going to tie any half-hitch knots because this is really tight. These beads are really tight. So I'm just going to cross my thread back and forth like y'all have seen me do before. Figure out where this stop bead's going. I think it's got sewed up in here somehow. Yeah. Get it out of the way. Okay. Now, coming out of this turquoise one, I'm just going to hop down here into this gunmetal strip row. Go through a couple of those. And then I'm going to hop down here, go into a couple of my delicas. Just making sure I go in where my thread's not going to show. Now I'm going to go up a couple of these delicas. Now I'm going to come over here and go back down these delicas again. I'll get my new stop bead caught. And I'm going to go back over here and go back up these again, just crisscrossing my thread. And I think I'll turn it around here and go up a few more of my delicas. And then go over here and go down these two. Guess I'll just go down one because it just wanted to go down one. Now I'll go back over here and go up two over here. Go back over here and go down two. Go over here and go up two. I think I'll go over here and get into this gunmetal row here. And then go up a couple of these 8/0s and get up closer to the top so that I can cut my thread off easier. I'm going to cut my thread now. So now I'm just going to take my stop bead off here and sew it in, just like I did that one, and I'm just going to continue on with this thread. I didn't know how long I was going to make this, but I had 2 strands of 50 fire polish beads, and I've used 38 of them so far, so I think I'm probably just going to keep going until I use up both strands of my fire polish, and then I'll come back and we'll cinch the ends in and put it on my cord. So I'll be back. Okay, so it's almost exactly 24 hours later, and this is what I've got here. I had 100 3mm fire polish, and I just used them all up. Well, I used 99 because I saved one to do as a dangle on the end of my extender chain. So 99 fire polish beads came to, that's a little over 4 inches, maybe 4 1/4 inches. It's kind of, it's kind of springy. It'll kind of draw out a little bit if you want to stretch it. But, and like I said before, putting these 2 rows of the smallest, of your smallest beads in there helps make it more flexible. Because if you don't do that, it can be really, really stiff. I think I did a pretty good job on the gluing the accordions in. They don't seem like they're going anywhere. I pulled on them. So I might do more of this in the future. I have some of these. I just never have really used them because I've always been afraid of glue. But I did okay this time, so I guess I might try to use them some more in the future. I'm going to feed this feed my cord through my tube that I've made here. I'm not really going to worry about centering it until I do the other end. I think it'll still move well enough. So I'm going to try to cinch in this end here, and I hope you can see what I'm doing with this cord in the way. When you do this, you want to use your smallest bead, so that would be in my case my 11/0 Delica, and I'm going to lay out 7 because I know I'm going to have 7 every time I go around, and it can be just a little bit harder when you're going around with all the same bead, especially the second row when we're going back into the same beads. But so I'm going to pick up one of my Delicas. This is where I stepped up. I picked up my 3mm fire polish that came through these 2 8/0s and did my step up. So now I'm going to just go around with all Delicas through all the sticking out beads. And when I get around here to the bigger beads, it'll start really drawing it in. Just spinning my work around as I go. Putting 11/0 Delicas in between all the beads. Now I'm going to go into this 8/0 here and pull it in. Now I'm going to go in my 3mm fire polish here. See, that starts to pull it in. Now I've got one more bead left in this row. I'm going to go in this 8/0 and through that first Delica that I put on this round. That's my step up this time. Now I'm going to put another row of Delicas on, so I'm going to lay out 7 here so I don't get lost. And I'm just going to put a delica between all the sticking up delicas. I'm just going to draw it in as I go. It's storming here now. I hope I don't lose power again. There, I'm just going to keep drawing it in. That's just going to close that end off. Well, you can't see me. That's just going to close that end off there. So now here, I'm going to jump over this 3mm fire polish and go into this delica and pull it tight, and that's going to draw it in. I'm doing more than this one row. Okay, now this is the delica I started this row in, so I'm going to go into it and the delica on the diagonal. And pull that through and tighten everything up, and that's tightening everything down, but I can still move my cord. Now I'm going to do another row. I don't know for sure how many rows I'm going to do here, just until it gets drawn in as much as I want it to be. I'm going to lay out 7 more beads, and I'm going to just put delicas between all the sticking out delicas. Now I've got my last bead here, so I know this is my step up. So I'm going to skip that delica that's down in there, and I'm going to go in this delica. And the one on the diagonal. Let's see, so that's still moving pretty good. I think I'll do one more row, and then that's probably as drawn in as I need it to be. My cord will still move, but I think it'll be tight enough that it'll stay fairly stationary on the cord when I get it down to the center. So I'm going to do 7 more here. I'm just going to go put a delica between and you can go on with this as long as you want to. If you want to make this part of your design, if you want to make a lot of, a big long strip of the delicas down through here, that would be pretty. I don't know if y'all have ever noticed my email that I always post down in the description box, but it's rainwife_KY, which is because I live in Kentucky, at yahoo.com. And the reason it's rainwife is because my husband is crazy about the weather. He is fascinated by the weather. He used to chase storms back when he was able. It worried me when we first got married, but I finally figured out that he knew a lot about them, and he knew how they were going to move, so I didn't go with him, but I didn't really worry about him that much. But he is sitting uptown right now. Here it is, almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and he's sitting uptown in the car just enjoying this thunderstorm that we're having right now. And when he first got on the internet years ago, when we first got internet back in the days of dial-up and such, he wanted a handle to use on his internet. Back then you didn't People were more worried back then about putting their real name on the internet than they are now. Probably should be more worried about it now, but most of us just put our real names on there. But he wanted a handle, so he decided to use Rain Man because he's crazy about the weather. So then when I got on the internet and needed a handle, I decided to be Rain Wife. So if y'all ever seen my email and wonder how that came about, that's the story. Okay, so now I've got my end kind of closed in there fairly well. So now I'm just going to take my thread and I'm going to go back through here, sewing back and forth between the beads until I cross over my thread a lot, so that it won't come out. And then I'm going to cut it like I did when I added thread, and then I'm going to cut it off. And then I'm going to center my piece on my leather here. I mean, it's not really going to matter because it's going to move, but I'm going to center my piece on my leather here, and I'm going to close off this other end just like I did this end. I'm just going to do the same amount of rows, and then I'll be back and I'll put the bindings on. Okay, this is what I've got now. And I told you that I left a 10-inch tail at the beginning to do my tapering with on this end. That was not enough. I tried several times and I didn't have enough, so I had to just sew that in and add in a new thread to do the tapering on the other end. So I would leave if I do this again, I will leave more like at least a 15-inch tail probably to do the tapering with, because I didn't have enough. So now I'm just going to make a dangle to go on my extender chain. I'm just going to do this before I put it on the necklace. Just going to take my ball head pin here and put my little fire polish bead on it. I don't think I said at the beginning that I needed my bent chain nose pliers and my cutters and my little New Orleans shot glass to put my wire in when I cut it off, because I just forgot I was going to need them for this, but I am. I'm going to go to the tip of my pliers. I'm going to bend my pin at a 90-degree angle. Take my round nose pliers, put them in the crook of the bend, round nose pliers facing me. Bend the wire back until it hits the bead. Rotate the pliers till they're facing the table. Hold on tight and pull this part up and under here until it hits the bottom of the tool. Cock it back some so that the loop is centered over the bead. Now I'm going to open my loop and thread on my extender chain. Close back my loop. Take both pairs of my bent chain nose pliers. I guess I probably didn't mention these either. I didn't mention both pairs anyway. I don't think I mentioned either pair. I don't know. I probably did, because I knew I'd have to have one pair to put on the findings of the clasp. So now I'm going to hold with one. Try to keep my chain out of the way here. Try to keep a hold of my loop really good, so it will hold really tight so it doesn't get out of shape. I'm going to take my other pair of bent chain nose pliers and I'm just going to start wrapping. I always want to get that first wrap really good and tight. I'm just going to wrap until there's no more room to wrap. I'm going to cut off my extra wire. And I know I didn't mention my crimping pliers to tuck in the little end of the wire where I cut off. So I just forgot everything. So now I'm just going to put my findings on. I'm going to take this is a 6mm jump ring. Open it up. Put it on my cord end here. Put my lobster on. Close it up. Now this is an 8mm jump ring. it up. Put my other end on. Put my extender chain with my little dangle on here. Oh, there we go. That's what I got. Let me put it together here and get some of my stuff out of the way, and I'll be back. Okay, so there it is, my Cellini spiral necklace that I've made and put on the cord that I got in the Jesse James Beads Magical Mystery Bead Box. I enjoy doing Cellini spiral. I like to watch it grow as I make it. I hope you all have enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate those of you who have subscribed to my channel and watched my videos and liked and commented on my videos. I have a website where I sell my jewelry. It's Teresa's Handmade Jewelry, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below in case you're interested, along with a link to my Facebook and Instagram and my email. If you haven't, I'd really love it if you'd subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. So until next time, I hope you all have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.